they're sitting in their living room watching the interview, and Harry literally has his hand over Meghan's face like this, over her eyes while they're watching. And then she like slowly like takes his hand down from her eyes, and you know, he puts his hand back around behind her shoulders and it's like rubbing her shoulders and stuff. And I'm like, is this your version of protecting your woman? Like, you guys are watching TV and you cover her eyes like a parent who just accidentally forgot about the sex scene in this movie they wanted to show their kids? Like, what am I witnessing here? Why do you, as a grown-ass man, her husband no less, have your hands over her eyes like she's a child that can't handle what's on TV? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise, and today we are going to be doing the last episode of the Harry and Meghan documentary from Netflix. This final episode was very different from any of the previous episodes that they had filmed so far. The previous episodes do a lot of relying on talking heads and professors and lawyers and, you know, different people in academia to explain their story and to give legitimacy to their sad tale of woe. And on this last episode, they're putting it together and pulling it together largely from cell phone video diaries that they have made. It's terrible. They try to cover a lot of ground and a lot of information at once, and they do a really terrible job helping you understand what exactly is happening in their story. It's a lot of quick snippets about events that happened, and while they're talking, they'll have headlines of the event with like one or two choice words highlighted, and you're supposed to sort of, again, do the legwork, figure out what they're talking about. They are so inexplicably shallow for a couple that really wants you to know their full story. They do a terrible job conveying that to their audience. Now, you and I probably know a lot about the stories they're telling. So if you and I were to watch this documentary, we come with a plethora of information at our fingertips. So we can sort of pull from our knowledge of like, oh yeah, they're talking about this or this. But they didn't make this documentary for people who already knew and had decided what they thought about Harry and Meghan, because they're not changing our ideas. They made this for a bunch of people who they were hoping to cull onto their team. Unfortunately, they do such a terrible job of explaining what exactly is happening that if I were new to the Harry and Meghan saga, I would have finished this episode and been like, what was that? What were they talking about? What happened? Because a lot of this episode is all about the lawsuit, about the letter, and it's kind of complicated. In some sense, there are some complicating factors, but they are also being so deceptive and unclear and obtuse about Meghan's role in all of it and where she, you know, what were the claims against her. They don't want to introduce the claims against her lest you think, well, that sounds legitimate, you know? So they just do a lot of skipping over things, but they want to talk to you. They want to advertise the win that she got in that. So they have to talk about the case so they can get to the part where she wins the case. But if you're not willing to talk about the pieces and the parts of the trial, then you're just leaving your viewers going like, wait, I don't get it. Why did this matter so much to you guys? Because that is the prevailing thought I had this entire episode. Why did you guys keep going with this trial if it was costing you so much? And I have a lot to say about that. We talk about the miscarriage. We talk about what is Harry's feelings about living in America. We talk about the invitation of her niece Ashley back into her life. A lot to say about that too. We're going to talk about the Oprah interview. We're going to talk about Tyler Perry. I mean, there's so many elements to their story that we're going to talk about today. So I just need to get into it. As a little side note, thank you for commenting so many times. Thank you for all of the new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for sharing so many times. You guys are sharing these videos like crazy with friends who you know would enjoy. So thank you so much for that. Huge, huge thanks. If you enjoy some interaction with content creators like other YouTubers that you enjoy, great place to find that interaction is on Instagram. So I have created Instagram to go with this channel. And yesterday we were doing an Ask Me Anything. And so we had fun answering questions back and forth. I've tried doing Ask Me Anythings as YouTube videos, but I'm really bad at them. So I think it just works better for me in real time to be answering your questions instead of trying to like collect everyone's questions and then do a video. I'm just disorganized about it. So if you like that kind of thing, Instagram would be a great place for you to follow me as well. Okay, back to this episode, because it is, like I said, so much to cover. It's insane they tried to make all of this one episode, but they did. And I guess when you're willing to do such a sloppy, shallow job, it's possible. But I have a lot to say, so this might be a 2-hour episode. We start off with them on the quote-unquote freedom flight. I remember when the ads were coming out and the promos were coming out for this Netflix documentary, and this specific intro to this last episode was aired all the time. And they were talking about Harry's talking into his phone, being like, we're on the freedom flight, and all this. And he's got these huge black pupils in his eyes, and there was lots of people saying, like, is he on drugs? Like, what is happening? And people making fun of them, talking about, like, oh, the freedom flight from the royal family. But what they're actually talking about is it was one of the last flights that they could get out of Canada before the border was closed because of COVID. So I think that's what he's talking about in the sense of, like, freedom. But then also, they were also leaving Vancouver Island because somebody had leaked to the Daily Mail where they were living, and they are terrified that the whole world knows where we're living and we have no security. And so they had convinced themselves that death was imminent and that somebody was going to come in and like slaughter their family. Okay. But because they were so sure of this, Harry felt that he needed to figure and solve the problem. Well, it wasn't actually him who solved the problem. It's Meghan who's going to solve the problem and get herself out of Canada. They are leaving Canada on the private plane of Tyler Perry. How did Tyler Perry get involved in this story, you ask yourself? Well, we're all asking ourselves that, scratching our heads to this very day. But way back when Meghan had been entering into the family, Tyler Perry, who's interviewed for this documentary, by the way, Tyler Perry comes on and says, look, I'm not really a royal family watcher. I'm not a royal watcher, but I had picked up on the fact that her and her dad were having problems, and their dad seemed like he was flaking on her and wasn't showing up to her for the wedding. It seemed like she was having lots of familial discord, and my heart went out to her. Now, the thing that struck me about Tyler Perry is that, well, I think that he may be genuinely empathetic. I think he is a gigantic fool. I think that for a man his age to show such a wanton lack of wisdom is unbelievable. I was astounded by how quickly he made connections without foundation or basis. And I'm like, how old are you again? Like, you can't possibly go through the world with such flimsy reasonings for doing the things you do. But then I remembered that he does make the Medea House series, so maybe that was all I needed to know about him. He says that after watching Meghan struggle with her family and knowing what that is, to have family completely betray you and show them their worst sides once you get a little fame, he's experienced that. He wanted her to know that there are people in her community who had their arms open to her and were praying for her. So he wrote her a note when she was getting married saying, I see what you're walking into, which is, in his estimation, the belly of the beast, and I just want to let you know that my arms are open to you and I'm praying for you. But Meghan puts that little note in her pocket to save for a later date. Save that for a rainy day. And, well, it's a rainy day. And she's going to have to call on the generosity and the kindness of Mr. Tyler Perry. So they are freaking out in Canada. They have no security. They don't know what they're going to do. She decides that after years of never contacting him, never even saying a thank you for the note, because she said she never answered the note, that she decides to call him up bawling, saying, help us, help us, help us. We don't know what we're going to do. Okay, can we just talk for a minute about somebody sends you a really nice note saying, I'm praying for you, somebody you don't even know but who is quite famous, and you don't even answer the note. But then when you have a plethora of problems and the world is falling apart and you don't know which way to turn, and you and your husband have not one jot or tittle of an idea, then you guys decide that you're going to call on the help of your famous friend? What a way to use people, and what an evident way to use people. He's just thrilled that Harry and Meghan are contacting him because these are some people that he wants to help. Again, I want to say, and I think that it is right to say, since I don't know this person, I'm going to choose to believe that Tyler Perry is just a very genuine person and that his motivations were pure. So he says to them, I will get you out of there. I will fly you on my private plane. I will let you stay at my house. Don't worry about security. Meghan says that as she bawled on the phone telling him all her problems, she said, we can just stay a week. And he said, stay indefinitely, as long as you need to feel safe. Harry's like, woohoo! As long as we need to feel safe, we'll let it stay forever then. Meghan says that she immediately found a kindred spirit in Tyler Perry. And the reason is because sometimes it's just easier to tell somebody that you don't know all the hard things. And sometimes it's just easier to just open your heart and be vulnerable with somebody who doesn't know you. And I'm like, you mean it's easier to lie to somebody who isn't already onto the case that you are a massive manipulator? Yeah, that is easier. Tyler Perry is primed to be brainwashed. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's the story that he tells himself, as many Americans do, who have ideas about the oppressed and the oppressors. They have translated into England these storylines that are completely American storylines that cannot be translated and transmuted to another culture. But Tyler Perry has, for whatever reason, decided that the royal family is an institution that is, at its very core, a hate-filled, oppressive institution. And so whatever he can do to help one of his sisters, he's going to do it, to help at least one of his sisters to break free from oppression. And so if his motivations are mostly good, I think there is a motivation in it to make himself feel good, to make himself feel like he really helped her out, and that this makes him feel good about himself, that he does not let oppression go. He does not let injustice happen. Social justice is a cause he cares about. And here is Meghan Markle, somebody with a deep tan who might be oppressed by some white people. It's time for him to get working here and save her. So he opens up his house to them. And I really think that in the conversation that they had, where he says that she sounded so scared and so afraid, and he asked her, what are you afraid and scared of? She rattled off all these things like, I'm afraid they're going to make me feel like I'm insane. I'm afraid they're going to convince me that I'm an insane person. I'm afraid that they are going to take away security and not help us to pay for the protection of our kids. I'm afraid because they tried to manipulate us with money by taking away our finances. I'm afraid because we're not going to have any ability to buy new shoes for Archie. Like all of these things about how she's so afraid. Playing into all these fears that Tyler Perry had of having seen his mother be abused and having witnessed a mother whose finances were cut off, who was manipulated with material possessions in order to get her to come back, who was, gaslit into believing that she was insane. He decides to translate that experience onto the experience that Meghan had with the royal family. So he says to the interviewer, yes, Meghan was being abused, and I was going to help her to come out of the abuse. And I don't care what people say. I don't care if people say that I can't make that same analogy. I know what abuse looks like. I know what the abuser does in order to manipulate you into coming back. And I was going to be the help that she needed to come out of that. So this is the role he's playing as savior. And that feels good to him. And he wants to keep playing that role. So even though he's having to invite the clown and her joker into his actual home, he's willing to do it so that he can keep telling himself the story of, I don't let abusers get away with things. That's great. And I'm really happy that, having seen what abuse looks like, he's vigilant in wanting to help others. But unfortunately, he does it in a very unwise way. He does it from an overly emotive place. And he's not coming at it with facts. The facts are the royal family cut Harry and Meghan off from security and from a financial stipend because that is not the royal family's money. That money is taxpayer money. So if Harry and Meghan are not going to be in country doing things for the Queen and as part of the royal family, they don't have the ability to continue to pay for Harry and Meghan's willfulness. So for Tyler Perry to say, oh, I know what abusers do. They try to cut you off financially. They try to control you with finances. Well, but it's not the royal family's finances to hand out at will and whim. So it's not really the same thing. So I just feel like he really just moved from a place of emotion and not from a place of logic and facts. And then he ends up getting himself entangled with manipulators because they too know how to play on your emotions, and they played him like a fiddle. The other thing Tyler Perry says is that he was appalled that the royal family would not offer security to Meghan. And when she was crying and saying, I'm really struggling because I'm afraid, he's like, yeah, I hated to tell her this, but she had every reason to be afraid because I'd seen the way the royal family did Diana. And I'd seen videos of Diana with all these paparazzi swarming around her after she left the royal family. And he uses the line, they literally threw her to the wolves. But I'm like, see, again, your ignorance is showing, Tyler, because there was security that was offered to Diana that she refused. She did not want those security men following her. She did not want it. Had she had royal security, which is what they wanted to give her, she probably would not have found herself in the position that she was in Paris when she died. But she didn't want that. She wanted to live her own life and do her own thing, and she didn't want anybody who she felt could spy on her and go back to the royal family and tell them what she was up to. So she refused the security that was offered. Tyler wants to act like royal family pulled security. No, Diana didn't want it. So enough of this, of reacting to a situation based on tabloid information. See, and that's the other part of this too that was really aggravating to me. Meghan and Harry are constantly incensed by the tabloids. But in this instance, Tyler Perry's truncated knowledge of the royal family, which he gained from tabloids, first the stuff with her father and him not being all he could, and Tyler, eating that up and reacting to it accordingly. And then the stuff about Diana, he's eating that up, acting to it accordingly. All of this is him believing stuff that he read in the tabloids. Somehow that's not problematic to Meghan. Tyler Perry is functioning on knowledge that he gained from tabloids. It's edited information, and in this instance, Meghan does not care to run in and help him understand the fuller context and the better story, and the bigger story. No. She's fine if he misunderstands what happened with Diana, and she's definitely fine if he misunderstands what happened with her dad. That's all information he got from the tabloids. But what is so wild to me is that Tyler Perry, a man who has been in a celebrity for a long time now, he makes a lot of money, he's very rich, and people know his name. That man, Tyler Perry, should know not to believe tabloids. And yet he is giving open his home. He's throwing open the doors to his palatial mansion to a couple of people based on information he got from magazines. And I know Meghan calls him and cries and reestablishes the narrative from the tabloids. But see, then that should cause him to be concerned as well. Because she's over there substantiating some of the things he read in tabloids. But, tabloids said other things too about Meghan. Not just about her dad being mad, or not just stuff about how the royal family threw Diana to the wolves. They've said other things too. So Meghan running in and saying, yes, my dad was terrible. Yes, they didn't take care of Diana. Could it possibly be true that some of the other things that the tabloids were saying were true? Like, why does he believe some things and not others? And why is Meghan trying to tell us that the media is terrible, yet when people misunderstand the media for her gain, suddenly everything's okay? It's fine that Tyler Perry didn't really get it and that he mostly got confused with the tabloids, as long as it's going to help her get a free place to stay. Finally, they get into Tyler Perry's home. It is a beautiful home set in the mountains. COVID's happened. So they are there for 6 weeks before anybody knows they're there. They're also there for 6 weeks before Harry even tells his family that he's there. They don't even know where he is. They don't even know he's out of Canada. Do you know how wild that is, that for 6 weeks your family could not know where you are and that you're living in a completely different country, but they don't know it because you can't be bothered to send a text message? They are so willing to accept Tyler Perry's handout that it is disgusting and kind of embarrassing, if I'm honest with you. Like, I'm a little bit ashamed for them that they're just like, and Harry is so greedy to stay in this house that doesn't belong to him, that is free, that is like, it's so amazing. We've got free security. We've got a free house. You should see this place. I mean, it is crazy. It's one of the nicest places I've ever been in my whole life. And he said we could stay for as long as we want. And I'm like, let's stay forever. And he literally says that. That's not me just goofing. Okay, and I know you guys are familiar with that line because there was a lot of people who made mention of that because it just seems so, like, grabby. Just seems to me that you would, as a prince and as somebody who has a well-documented publicly known amount of money that was given to you by your mother, that you would ever fall on the neck of some other wealthy celebrity and to be like, can you give me a handout? It just is like, no. Like, provide for yourself. Find yourself a house. Like, is it going to be this palatial mansion like Tyler Perry has? No, probably not. Not if you want to live in that part of the country. Probably you aren't going to be able to afford what he has, and then also afford to live. Like, maybe you could buy that house, but could you afford to put furniture in it? Could you afford to put food on the table in it? Probably not. But enough of this of just being like, well, we have to live here, and, if that means that I'm going to have to call in a bunch of favors, I'll do it. Call in a bunch of favors isn't even the right term, because that makes it seem like he's done something for somebody else. No, it's that was not the right wording at all. It's more like fall on his knees and beg and cry, which is literally what Megan did. When she called Tyler Perry, she turned on the waterworks to manipulate him into giving them a place to stay for free and a private jet to fly in. Do you guys have any friends with private jets and huge homes that you guys can just like call them up and be like, I'm having a really hard time. Can I use your jet in your house? Okay, so, but for somebody that she didn't even know, and that she had completely ignored until it was convenient for her to call on him and then ask him for huge favors, like a place to stay and a plane to fly in, it's wild to me that he accepted this, because I would have written her off as just kind of like somebody who is super rude, that you would completely ignore the letter that I sent you. And now I've never heard anything, not even like, hey, we're in LA, thank you so much for your note. I'd love to catch up and meet you in real life. Like, nothing has preceded her desperation for a place to stay. Yet Tyler's like, sure, come on, because he needs to feel like he's a good guy. Okay. We have lots, like I said, of video footage of them from their phones. It's Archie's first birthday. They're celebrating it at Tyler Perry's house. We get lots of footage of them just being like super normal. They're making a balloon arch for his birthday. They go out of their way to film Megan. She's got her phone on the counter and she's like filming herself mixing up his first birthday cake, because she's that kind of mom. She didn't buy his cake, please. I'm also like, well, it's COVID, so you probably couldn't. And then, let's see, all hell breaks loose when after 6 weeks, the demon Daily Mail finds them again. And Harry says that it was 6 weeks before they found them in Canada, and now it's 6 weeks here. It must be like a thing they have. They'll leave you in peace for 6 weeks, and then they come and destroy their life. So then they proceed to put up a grotesque fence all along the edge of Tyler Perry's property. It's hideous, because he's got these great views, but then they block it with this hateful fence. And I just can't believe that you'd be staying at somebody's house indefinitely. Like, initially it's like, we're just going to stay a week, okay? But now you're staying so long that you feel comfortable putting up a fence on this man's property. And they're putting up all this chain link fence on the back side of the property. They claim it keeps getting cut and people keep jumping in. They claim that it was necessary for Tyler to put up a whole new security system, extra cameras, plant more trees on his property so that, can continue to block the views from the hateful paparazzi. And it's like, how could you ask anybody to alter their property so that you can just not feel so bad? Now, Tyler Perry claims that even though there's a bunch of celebrities that live in that same area, he'd never seen the attack on anybody the way he saw on them. He claims there was a bunch of drones flying around over their house. He claims there was a bunch of helicopters. They show us a bit of footage of a helicopter so high in the sky that I cannot imagine it could have gotten any pictures of their property. And if it did, it would have been these fuzzy little images that maybe would have shown a couple of dots on the lawn that could have been them. But nobody was getting any footage of their kids. Which, by the way, let's talk about the kids for a second real quick. Side note, I don't know who the kids are in this documentary, but these are not their kids. These are different kids every time I see them. Like, legitimately. And also the ages of the two kids they keep showing don't match the ages that their kids would be. Like, a lot of times the kids are like, they look like the same age. And then, like, they say that the little girl's hair is reddish gold. And at one point they show a child crawling around the floor with reddish gold hair. But then in all the other footage, it's a brown-headed kid. They show Archie, who I thought also had red hair. Am I, like, misremembering? That they show this kid who's got a big mop of brown hair. I don't know who these kids are, okay? And I had heard that they were potentially using other kids in the documentary, but I also heard that from, like, a non-legitimate source. So it's hard to say. But I can tell you this is not any, like, judging on the descriptions that they have given of their own children in this documentary, these kids aren't them. Okay, so If the paparazzi are flying around, I don't know that they're going to get any pictures of any kids we'd recognize, because the only kids we know are some brown-headed kids. All right, well, after we get done talking about Tyler Perry and how he was overly generous with them and how they've decided to completely reorient his property so that they can hide from the paparazzi that I don't think are even there, we begin to talk about the obsession that is all-consuming, and that would be the lawsuit about the letter that she wrote to her dad. It is ongoing. And it shows footage of her late into the night where she's typing up all her comebacks to all the stuff that her lawyer says that the other team is coming to her with. And so she's, typing. Interestingly, Megan types like this. One hand's going, sort of. Sometimes we've got this going, but one hand's kind of going with these 3 fingers. The other hand is just this one. What? How did she get through college and not know how to type? Okay, so that's side point, but I don't get it. Anyway, at this point in the documentary, the news has come to them that though the judge had originally said that he was just going to rule in Megan's favor, he didn't want a trial and he didn't want disclosure. Now they are asking for disclosure after all, because I guess there was some kind of appeal. And now they've got to show disclosure. So they've told Megan that they need, from her email and from her phone, any times that the words "I love you, Archie, Will, Kate, and Africa" come up on her phone. They need anything that has those words in it. And Harry and Meghan are flabbergasted and super angry about it, because they say, and if this is true, it is kind of strange, they say that this is just the Daily Mail's way of getting more information about them, and that they're just continuing to do more digging, and that as long as this lawsuit goes on, they have to fork over more and more private information in order to win the case. But they're going to win it come hell or high water. Is it worth it though, you guys? Like, if you're really worried about your privacy, just call it a loss. They decided to publish a letter that you wrote to your dad. All right, you wrote it to your dad. Who cares if anybody reads it? It isn't as though you were writing a letter to, your affair partner and that was leaked. It isn't as though you were writing a letter so you could embezzle money from the family company. Like, you wrote a letter to your dad and people found out you wrote a letter to your dad. What's the loss here? And if you wrote it with the intention for it to be leaked, as we'll talk about later, what do you think was in there that was so condemning? You're the one that's making it a big issue. You're the one that wants to create this whole problem so that you can write and be like, I'm going to be the one who changes it for everyone else. The media is going to keep lying about people and keep lying about people and keep lying about people. But you know what? They're not going to lie about me. Don't let them. Who gives a damn? That's what I don't understand. Who do you think that you are helping with all of this? You're hurting yourself and yourself only, and nobody cares. It's like if that letter had just come out and she'd just been like, oh, unfortunate, I wish that hadn't happened, and moved on, nobody would ever even remember she wrote a letter to her dad. But she's the one that has made it. This is dragged on for years at this point, And as she says, she's like complaining about it, and she's saying, it's just taking so long for this to finally be rectified. When I started this, I didn't even have kids. And since it started, I've had Archie, I've had a miscarriage, and I've had Lilibet. And it's still going, and it isn't solved yet. And I'm like, that's ding, ding, ding. That's a message to you that you're dragging something out that shouldn't be dragged out this long. That many years of being under stress, that's your fault, because you could have just chosen at any time to let this one go. But you had to get Chicklet Teeth Jenny up in this place to come litigate for you and change the whole narrative of the story so you could have this win. But at the end, was it a win? All right, we got a lot to cover, so I need to just keep going. The new issue that has come up, along with the fact that on disclosure, they want to get into all of her personal emails and find out stuff that she says has nothing to do with the initial letter. The new issue is that all the names of her friends from the People magazine article are about to be leaked, and the court wants to go and talk to all of those friends who are supposedly witnesses to this letter. Now, her friends all knew that she had written this letter and apparently had been shown a draft of this letter, and one of the friends who had been interviewed for the People magazine made mention of it. And so, because she mentioned the fact that this letter was being sent and that she seemed to have knowledge of the letter. Now there's the concern that, well, Meghan was showing the letter around anyway, and her friend already mentioned the letter. So if her friends already mentioned the letter, then the Daily Mail can go ahead and talk about the letter because her friends already did it. And Meghan knew that her friends were talking to people. Meghan says, I didn't even know my friends were talking to people, okay? They decided to do it as a fun little surprise. What's interesting, though, is that Meghan has already said in this documentary at a previous time that she didn't ever really read the article that her friends had done for People magazine. So kind of a bitchy move of hers if her friends did this as a fun surprise to her to talk about their great friend. And then she didn't even read it. Right? So for her to say, my friends just did this as a fun little surprise and, they have to be allowed to be kind to me and I'm going to protect their names and identities because they were trying to be nice to me when they did this interview for People magazine to defend my character. And I didn't even know that they were going to do it. And, well, they did do it and you didn't read it. What was the point and purpose of that whole thing then? For them to stick their necks out for you and then you didn't even read it? It's so convoluted. The whole thing is taking a stress on Meghan. She has been arguing for years about this at this point, you guys. And she has had to defend herself over and over and over. Well, the problem now is that she has worked herself into such a tizzy that she's now compromising her own health and that of her unborn child. Meghan, and I don't want to make light of this because this is actually very, very tragic. Meghan has a miscarriage. And I think on the one hand, I want to say I am super, super sad for her that happened. Miscarrying a child is one of the greatest griefs that any family and couple can walk through together. And if that really happened to her, I am saddened for them that they had to deal with that tragedy, especially because they do want kids, and they did want a big family. So that is so sad. On the other hand, there's a part of me that goes, did you though? Because in Harry's book, apparently they had the miscarriage. She went to the hospital. Then they took the body and buried it on their property under a tree. So I'm like, but they wouldn't let you do that if you'd had a miscarriage. So I don't know if the miscarriage actually happened. I got problems believing that. The other thing that makes me question the whole thing is, in this part of the documentary where they're talking about the miscarriage, she has a friend who says Meghan and Harry had just moved into their own home. They'd moved out of Tyler Perry's place and into their own place in Montecito. And the friend had come over the day after they moved in to help unpack. And she said that she met Meghan and that Meghan seemed very distracted by this pain she was having. And that she was holding Archie and she's like, yeah, this is my house. But she was just like, I'm having a lot of pain. And then suddenly she fell to the floor while holding Archie, because she was in that much pain. Okay, mamas out there. If you were having a miscarriage, and I have never had one, so I want to be really fair because maybe I really just don't know the pain of having a miscarriage. But if you were miscarrying a child and you were in a lot of pain, would you be walking around holding your child and wait till you got to the point of debilitating pain to where you drop yourself and the child to the ground? It just seems to me like you would be like, I need to sit down well before that, or you would have asked your friend, can you hold Archie? I'm feeling really weak. But to me, that just seems like, why is she always on the ground? Multiple times she's on the ground crying to Harry in various books we've read. At their own admissions, she's on the ground crying. Now she's throwing herself on the ground with the witness of a friend. It's like, how convenient that she wasn't falling to the ground in pain before her friend showed up. Anyway, she's falling to the ground with Archie and she miscarries the child. Again, if that really happened, my heart goes out to them genuinely. I hate that for them. If it didn't happen, then it makes the next thing she did even more horrific. Because then she decides to write an article for the Times about her miscarriage, and she calls it The Losses We Share. And she capitalizes 4 months after the miscarriage. She capitalizes on it to get a little free publicity and little free empathy from the public. So her name's kind of being dragged with this lawsuit, but now she's lost a baby. And she is going to capitalize on the fact that everybody in society right then was having major losses and really difficult, lonely periods because of lockdowns, because of having to be away from loved ones and friends and family. People were falling back into addictions. People were falling back into habitual patterns of abuse. Abusive relationships were on the rise. People were losing loved ones in hospitals, not able to see them. So she, having this miscarriage, and somehow she was able to go to the hospital, somehow she was able to be with Harry, somehow she was able to take that baby and bury it on her property. Somehow she wants to write to you all and gain a bunch of empathy, knowing that you're struggling right now too. And you have real struggles because you're locked up in your tiny little studio apartment, and she's got this palatial mansion, but she wants to reap the benefits of your pain and stitch them together with the story that she had a miscarriage and gain sympathy and empathy back for herself. We pan over to Doria, who is interviewed by it, and Doria is the least articulate person possibly in this interview, second only to Ashley. And Doria says, well, when she wrote that article, I thought it was strong and courageous, but it didn't surprise me because she is strong and courageous. And yeah, that's the end of what Doria has to say about that. Okay. Once she's written the article, The Losses We All Share, she then wants to capitalize on that bit of do-goodery so that she can now find herself doing lots of other things and taking on many causes, many non-royal causes, so that she can continue to let her light shine. And we get them investing in lots of female entrepreneurship, mental health, the environment, gender equality. I just feel annoyed because it's all buzzwords. There's no actual creativity in any of the causes that they decide to hitch their star to. Wouldn't it be better if you guys decided to champion a cause that no one knew about yet? But of course you're going to run over and be like, women's rights, the environment. Have you heard about the pink tax? Then they decide to jump on this really fun equality cause, and that is vaccine equity. You guys, was there anybody who wasn't able to get that vaccine who wanted it? There was plenty of us who didn't want it, who were having it shoved at us right, left, and center. And it was an arduous task to stand up for your right to not have one. But they're over there getting up on stages, and Harry's coming out with lines like, me and my wife believe that the way you're born should not dictate your ability to survive. And the crowd roars like he's really said something. That is a non-statement, you guys. Me and my wife believe that the way you were born should not dictate your ability to survive. Take that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Sorry, Harry, that didn't make any sense because it doesn't mean anything. Sometimes the way people are born does dictate the way they survive, like whether they have a vicious heart condition or are born with one lung. Sometimes they don't have a brain and they are going to die. That does dictate the way that they live. But I think what you meant, Harry, was that people should treat each other equally, and that if somebody has a physical difference, like their skin is darker than somebody else, they should be allowed to get that vaccine. Okay, now here we come to some more do-goodery. They team up with the NAACP to give out a Digital Civil Rights Award. I don't know what that means or what that's supposed to entail or what you had to do in order to win one. Then she is invited to speak for the Immaculate Heart High School graduation, and she gives their commencement address. Remember, that was her high school. So she takes this opportunity to say George Floyd's name over and over again and invoke the sainthood of George Floyd. They definitely sound off on police shootings. Then she wants to let us know that if you're tired of hearing about the police violence and the police shootings, well, she has a solution she'd like to offer. People say, how many times do we have to say that we need to rebuild? But we have to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild until it's rebuilt. What the hell are you talking about? You have to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild until it's rebuilt? Yeah. Okay. Like, what emotion was supposed to be conveyed by that statement? Just because you said it with emotion doesn't mean you said anything. you have to eat that cheese and eat that cracker until you've swallowed it all. And then you eat another cracker and you eat some more cheese until you've swallowed it all. And then you're full. So full. I didn't say anything, but I said it with emotion. Okay, so somebody needs to help them with less emotion and more worth to their words. Let's work on that. Okay, because Harry's coming over here telling you that, your birth shouldn't equal your ability to live. And she's over here talking about building and rebuilding. But it's like, why don't you guys say something? Say something. You have a platform. Say something that's worth saying. Like, truly, you should feel compelled to work harder on your speeches because people are listening. So give them something to actually latch onto. But at the end of this episode, when Meghan decides to read to us the speech that she gave at her wedding, which apparently no British brides give speeches at their weddings, it is so stupid and so unbelievably paltry and lame that it makes sense why she'd say something like, we have to build and build and build until it's rebuilt, and act like that was a statement. Because she's so proud of anything she wrote, even if it's stupid. If her hand touched the page and she wrote something down, especially if it's in her fancy writing, it's worth saying, you guys. Again, we get lots of phone videos all set to Motown music, so much wasted time. They decide to announce that they're pregnant with their second baby. We get lots and lots of footage of them going out into the mountains and walking their dogs or going down to the ocean and seeing, making a turn and seeing the Pacific Ocean for the first time. And they're just lots of gasps, lots of, oh my goodness, my love. My love. Look at it, my love. Who calls each other my love? British people. Dear friends. Tell me, do you guys refer to each other in your relationships as my love? You walk home, you open the door, you've been at work all day, your spouse is there before you. Do you open up the door and go like, oh, my love, I had such a hard day? Do you guys talk to each other like that? I just think my love is weird. Love, yeah, like you hear people say that all the time, like call each other love. Okay, that's fine. My love? That's a hard one for me, you guys. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, well, again, like I said, they're pregnant now. They're hiring a new photographer who is gonna do their announcement. Seems like for people who want to be private and don't want anybody to know about their kids and who were really stodgy and difficult when it came to the birth of Archie. Now that they're on their own, they can't wait to let everybody see the pictures of her pregnancy and announce it to the world. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Interestingly, they decide to put out their announcement about the baby who will be Lilibet on Valentine's Day. And Harry wants you to know that his mother also put out her announcement on Valentine's Day when she was pregnant with him. Coincidence? I don't think so. Sounds like his mom orchestrated that one from above. I'm like, or your witch from below. Anyway, Oprah has been knocking on their front door for a while wanting an interview. Apparently, she was hounding them way back at Kensington Palace when she stopped by to say their house was atrocious. But they just couldn't seem to nail down a date, right? But they've been in America for a whole year, a whole hellacious year, may they add. And Oprah really wants to get in on some of this drama while she still can. So she finally gets them to settle on a date with her, and they decide to sit down and really have a weepathon. They felt that the year that they had been dealing with was a real beating, and who better to talk to them about their oppression than the queen of oppression herself, Oprah. So right before the interview comes out, the bullying accusations regarding Meghan came out. So everyone knows an Oprah interview is impending and that it's been filmed and that it's going to be released. The palace knows this as well. And so some people have said that they took that opportunity to slip out into the public. Oh, by the way, she's a massive bully. And everybody hated her and was happy to see her leave. Meghan comes out and says, as a survivor of abuse and bullying myself, this was really hard for me to hear that anybody would think that I would bully them, because I have been bullied and I know what it is to be bullied. And it was hard to hear that people would say that about me, because they know it's not true. But it was obvious that the reason they were doing that is because they were so scared of the things that I was going to say about them in the Oprah interview that they had to strike back. Hurt people. And that's what they were doing. And another one of her friends comes out and is like, it was obvious that there were some people at the palace who are just really scared of Meghan and the power that she has. sure nobody was. I think they were just trying to be like, hey, by the way, don't believe anything she says because she's a liar and a manipulator. But Harry wants to let you know that when you speak truth to power, this is the consequence. Sometimes they can't take it. I love how he speaks in these little phrases. We were just trying to speak truth to power. Like, did somebody just slide that slogan over to him and give him that to keep in his pocket for just such an occasion? Because it's like, how about you don't speak in cliches? Do you have any words in your head of your own, or do you just wait for Meghan and her cronies to let you know? He used it as though this was a new phrase that he had just heard and was eager to use it. Anyway, they're telling us about the Oprah interview. They show footage of them watching the interview that night, and it is weird footage. They're sitting in their living room watching the interview, and Harry literally has his hand over Meghan's face like this, over her eyes while they're watching. And then she slowly takes his hand down from her eyes, and he puts his hand back around behind her shoulders and it's rubbing her shoulders and stuff. And I'm like, is this your version of protecting your woman? You guys are watching TV and you cover her eyes like a parent who just accidentally forgot about the sex scene in this movie they wanted to show their kids? What am I witnessing here? Why do you, as a grown-ass man, her husband no less, have your hands over her eyes like she's a child that can't handle what's on TV? Okay. The tragedy of the whole thing was that here she'd been so vulnerable about her suicidal ideation and about how the royal family could not bestir themselves to get her any mental health support, and they totally ignored her pleas. They didn't even care about that. All they cared was that there was some talk about race a little bit. And there were some accusations. But they didn't go into it. Harry said he'd never tell anybody about that conversation. So why did they want to make such a big stink about it? I'm sorry, Meghan. Nobody cares about your fake claims to suicidal ideation when you are openly calling members of the royal family, the senior members of the royal family, racist. And, did we overreact to the Oprah interview on the race claims? Yes, but they also said that at a time when everything was about race. Remember, we were coming off the back of the George Floyd thing. People were rioting in the streets. Cities were being burned down over race. No family has ever had the conversation about what will the baby look like. Even two white people who have a kid. And one, my husband and I are both white, but he's got blonde hair, blue eyes, and I've got dark hair and dark eyes. Brown hair, brown eyes, blonde hair, blue eyes. What are the kids going to look like? Well, they all look like him. You wouldn't even know I birthed them. But the thing is that everybody has that conversation. How much more so are you going to have that conversation when you have a biracial wife and a redheaded husband? Okay, you're going to have a conversation about what that kid's going to look like. And all in a spirit of excitement about the birth of the baby. So did we as a nation fall down on the job of handling some information about a conversation? Yes, we all were wringing our hands. Is it racist? Is it racist? I think it was racist. It wasn't. But just because Oprah wanted to say something with emotion, but no real feeling behind it, everyone caught the feeling that something had happened that they couldn't understand because their skin was too white to understand. I'm just so white, I can't understand the racism that just happened. But Oprah's black, so she must know about something. She must have heard something with her black ears that I, as a white person, can't hear. And we all bought into it because she decided to sit up and ask slowly, "They asked what color your baby would be?" And she was wearing glasses, so that makes her smarter than you. Then we're going to be talking about the next day. What was the reaction to the Oprah interview? Which, by the way, has practically been scrubbed from anything. I don't think you can even find that interview anymore. But we get lots and lots of shots of Meghan sitting in front of her computer with her phone. She's basically just waiting, inundated with all of this feedback from the interview. Beyonce texts her. Harry's sitting right there. He's got his laptop open. Both of them are monitoring what's going on in the world. God forbid they've got a couple of kids over there that might need them, and they've got their phones by them. She calls her mom. Mom, is it quiet over there? Are you being swamped by paparazzi? And her mom's like, no, actually it's fine. And Meghan's like, oh, well, I'm glad, she's super disappointed. And her mom's like, I'm so proud of you, and I'm getting a lot of messages from people who are so proud of you, and don't let anybody bother you. Just put on your big girl panties and don't care. And Meghan's like, yeah, the biggest, Mom. And then, Beyonce texts her, and Harry's like, why don't you call him back? Beyonce, oh my gosh, call Beyonce back. And Meghan's like, no, that's okay. She just wanted to let me know that I've been chosen by the universe to break generational curses. And Harry's like, well, that was well worded. Tyler Perry weighs in on the whole thing, and it's like, there's a lot more she could have said, but she's just such a classy and elegant woman, she refrained. See, an elegant woman probably would have answered your very lovely wedding message with a message of her own instead of waiting years to call you in a crisis and then ask for your house. Anyway, we get to more depressing footage. It's now Easter. I think I mentioned this before, but they don't go to the church. They don't have any family gathering. No one's coming over to eat ham. They are going to divide and conquer the yard decorating, which consists of some cardboard cutouts of some Beatrix Potter characters. We've got Jemima Puddle Duck. We've got Peter Rabbit. Some footage of them. Not cell phone footage this time. Somebody's there to film Easter. Of them all sort of tottering around barefoot down the garden path, putting things here, putting things there. And the footage, you can't really tell what it is they're setting out. We see later some still shots of Jemima Puddle Duck and the Easter egg at her feet. But if you didn't know what was going on, if somebody were to show you this footage of 3 grown adults tottering around barefoot, stooping and swaying from side to side, you wouldn't know what was happening, and you would feel that you'd been shown some footage of an insane asylum. Meanwhile, grandfather dies. Harry goes alone to England because Meghan's too pregnant to come. And Meghan, we get some tributes, some gentle tributes about grandfather. Not too much, because we can't say too many positive things, or we can't act like the royal family is worthy of too much time in this documentary. But of course, somebody of significance did just die, so we'll throw him a bone. Harry says that, in the end, my grandfather went just the way I want to go. Went peacefully, happily, and quietly. But mostly happily. And I'm like, how do you know how he went? Number one, you're not even there. But then number two, how could he be happy? One of his grandsons has been missing for 6 weeks and the family didn't even know where he was. Now at this point they know where he is. But all of this huge kerfuffle has been going on through the last years of his grandfather's life. What are you talking about? He went quietly and peacefully, but mostly happily. How could he have gone happily? His family is in disarray. And the grandson, who so many people said was very much like him in all his best aspects, is the one that's run off and just fallen off a cliff with a crazy woman. Of course, Harry says that he tried to talk to his father and William, but of course they wouldn't listen to him. Yeah, the problem is, they're just so entrenched in their own ideas. They're never going to come around to it. And I've reached the point now where I just have to admit to myself that they're never going to apologize for the pain that they have caused me. And I have to just bear that weight. They're not going to bear it with me. I've got to be alone in this. And that's really what's so hard about it. But I realize I can't wait around anymore because they have one story in their idea and they can't get past it. Sounds like somebody else I know. Meanwhile, Lilibet is born. No mention of the scandal regarding her name. Not surprisingly, because they can't answer any of our real questions. Meghan's over there, cooing in the background. The way she talks is annoying to me. Are you getting ready to eat? Do you want some milk? Not from you, Meghan. They show Harry doing normal dad things. They literally show him with a push mower mowing 7 acres of grass. It's just so funny to me because it's like, you're not mowing your own lawn, man. And if you have 7 acres of grass, get a rider at least, right? I mean, what is this business of him trying to pretend like he's normal? He's so abnormal that he doesn't even realize you wouldn't be mowing your lawn with a push mower if you had 7 acres to mow. Okay, but Lilibet is born, and amidst all the breastfeeding and the lawn mowing, they call Tyler Perry and see if he wants to be the godfather of Lilibet. He seems underwhelmed by it, although he tries to put on a big show like he was super into it. He's like, I was like, wow, okay, big honor. Okay, all right, sounds good. Of course, then I hung up with them and I realized, wait a second, does that mean I've got to go over there and be with them and do the whole church thing? And if that's the case, if that's what you guys have to do, that's good, but I'm out. Annoyingly, when he's telling this whole story, he kind of switches his accent when he starts talking about having to go over to England. Oh, we're going to have to go over there and do like the church thing because I don't know about that. But then we got to get back to this lawsuit. Crazy lawyer Jenny says that the judge had been all ready and willing just to rule in Meghan's favor without a trial and without disclosure. I didn't know you could have any judge rule in anyone's favor when they haven't seen all the evidence, but okay. But of course the associate appealed that, and everyone on Meghan and Harry's side is like, yeah, it was just for clickbait. They just wanted more clickbait. That's why they appealed it. They weren't willing to just let sleeping dogs lie. Just let it be. They were in the wrong. They should just let Meghan have it. But then, after it's appealed, somebody from William's team, who happens to be Jason Kanoff, who happened to work for Harry and Meghan before, comes out with a witness statement. And Crazy Jenny is all mad about that because she's like, that wasn't even required. He didn't even have to come out with a witness statement. He just did it to gum up the works. And that's a statement in which Jason was saying, well, actually, Meghan did expect this to be leaked because she and I talked about it. We colluded over the fact that this could be leaked. So what is better wording that we can use? What are things that you can say to increase public empathy and sympathy for you in this scenario if, in fact, it is leaked? So then they're really, really mad about it. And Harry and Meghan are super hung up on the fact that the press keeps talking about Jason as a former aide of theirs, rather than saying that he is presently an aide for William. But why would the press even mention that it was that he was currently working for William? Because William's not part of the story. Jason has authority in this story because he worked for Harry and Meghan, and it was him with Meghan who had written the letter to her father. So of course it's incumbent upon the story to tell a full story, to say that he used to work for Harry and Meghan. What good does it do now to be like, but now he works for William? William's not part of the story. That is only interesting to Harry and Meghan because Harry and Meghan are convinced that William is favored. Well, he is. He's in line to the throne. So why do they keep acting so surprised about hierarchy? I'm so sickened by their continual anger at the reality of the situation. This is the way that it is. That's like if I went outside and just screamed to the skies because I hated the fact that the trees were green. I don't want green leaves. I want bright pink leaves, but they're green. And I'm going to get all worked up about it. This is just the way that it is. In order to have a royal family, there has to be hierarchy in order for it to function. If you want to make an argument that there shouldn't be a royal family, okay, make that argument. But that's not the argument that Harry and Meghan are making presently. At least Harry isn't. Maybe Meghan. She could probably be convinced to talk pretty negatively about the idea of having a monarchy. But right now they haven't made that argument. Yet they want to continue to be mad about the way that the monarchy is structured. But it is. That's what a monarchy is. That's how it has to be. So, their continual anger about it is aggravating. What I do want to say about this whole thing with Jason and the text messages is that I find it very interesting that prior to writing the letter to her father, she had drummed up all this faux anxiety and fear that it would be leaked. And she made everybody in the institution and in the family well aware that she was afraid that the letter would be leaked. She talked about it constantly and continually. And she says went to great lengths to make sure that that wouldn't happen. But it feels like those were just seeds she was planting so that the whole family could then, when it is leaked, then everybody who knew that she'd been worried about it would be like, oh, she's right. She was right to be worried. It happened just like she said, and she's planting all of this in everybody's mind that she really doesn't want this to happen. But of course she wanted it to happen, because if she didn't, she would have been planning with Jason about the right words. She would have gone and seen her dad if she really didn't want it to be leaked, right? She would have done something. We've already covered this ad nauseum. Okay. Of course, the witness statement made no difference. As Jenny says, after being really indignant about the fact that the statement was given because the person giving the statement didn't have to give a statement, It turns out that the statement had no legal weight. In the end, did the witness statement have anything to do? Was it even used by the judge to make his decision? No. And she ends up winning it. And then we get all this really lame footage of her, and she's calling all of her friends at 2 o'clock in the morning to let them know she won. And she and Harry are staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning to find out, what the verdict is. And it's just super selfish to be like, okay, you can stay up till 2 a.m. to worry about this lawsuit that you could have given up at any time. But why are you waking folks up out of their beds to let them know that you have just won? It's ridiculous. And Harry, kind of tries to wrap the whole thing up by saying, the media makes an awful lot of money on coming after people like this and bringing celebrities to trial. And it's just a complete circus, and it's just for them. They make so much money, they get so many stories out of it. And so, of course, we had to stand up against it. What are you talking about? Wouldn't that be the very reason why you wouldn't play into it, knowing that they're making so much money and that you are just now a clown in a circus? Wouldn't you not want to be used that way to help them make more money? Isn't that the whole reason you're angry in the first place? So why would you engage with them? To give them more information, to give them more of your personal property, your private information, so they can keep writing about you, if you know that's what they're doing? Isn't this kind of like shooting yourself in the foot? Isn't this self-defeating at best? But he's so proud of them for sticking with it even when it was really hard. So hard it made my wife miscarry. Because, we can't prove that it did make her miscarry, but I'm sure it did. He says that multiple times, that it was because of this lawsuit that they now are one less child in their family. If you are so stressed out that your body is evicting the life within you, would it not then be incumbent upon you to just drop the lawsuit? I mean, if you are working yourself up into such an emotional lather that you are miscarrying a child, you need to give up what is happening here. And if she was that stressed out, I'm surprised she was even able to get pregnant in the first place. If your body is just unable to function, you got pregnant in the first place. Miscarriages happen frequently, unfortunately. It does turn out that your wife is pretty stressed out. But if she was this stressed out, she would have been this stressed out before she miscarried. And at any point, she could have decided, this isn't worth it. I'm becoming ill. I don't feel well. If you are going to miscarry a baby due to stress, there would have been other markers of stress before you miscarried. And at any one of those, you could have said, I'm done. It doesn't matter enough to me. I'm here. I'm where I want to be. I'm in California. I'm doing the causes and things that I'm interested in doing. I'll just let this one lie. I don't have to win this one. But no, Megan says that after the whole thing ended, she realized that the word she needed to go for in her whole life, the word she needed to orient herself around, was the word peace. She needed peace in her life. And the way she was going to do that was by cultivating community here, because yes, they have no family thanks to her sad sack dad and Harry's crummy family. They do have their mom, but it'd be nice to have other family, but of course they have friends too. So she said her thing was just to work on all the friendships and stuff she'd had to lose because of the royal family, and just go back and cultivate those relationships. One of the people that she decides to call on now is her niece, Ashley. Remember, that's Samantha's daughter. And now that she has no one and everyone's abandoned her, she decides that she better call Ashley. Also, they're making a Netflix documentary, and it would really legitimize them if they had a family member other than her mom. So she rings Ashley up and starts milking that relationship for all it's worth. Old Ashley shows up. And, it's just hard for me because I'm like, Ashley, can't you see? She has been in California for years now and was in Canada for years, away from the royal family. At any point, she could have called you, texted you, been like, hey, remember how I told you the royal family was making it so I couldn't be friends with you? Well, I'm free now, and I just would love to hear from you if, whatever. But she doesn't do that. Now, suddenly, she's willing to do it. And so Ashley shows up at her door, and we get lots of footage of Ashley making zucchini muffins with some child that's supposed to be Archie, and lying next to some baby that's supposed to be Lilibet, I guess, in front of a Christmas tree. And we're supposed to believe that this is this big relationship that's just picked up from where they left off, It's no thing, no, I mean, I know I abandoned you for years and years and years and didn't let you come to the wedding, and, it was a big, stupid thing, but, like, you want to come in, like, help me babysit my kids? I've got a meeting. I need to get back on the computer and, like, check what people are saying about me. Do you mind, like, maybe you could, like, make some muffins with Archie? I put some ingredients out on the counter. I mean, it just feels like Meg is so disingenuous, but it also frustrates me that Ashley was willing to come back into Megan's life. And I'm not even one of those people that's like, burn all relationships if something feels toxic, run. Don't be like that. And you guys have heard me talk about that before. I do think we live in a time and in a culture where you are invited to cut people out of your life way too easily. That when somebody upsets you or disappoints you one time, you're supposed to act like it was a toxic relationship. No, but I do think in this instance, Megan has shown herself to be a toxic person. And she couldn't be bothered with you before, but now that she needs people in her documentary, she's going to play the long con again and talk to you. Now that the documentary is over, there's a big part of me that wonders, is she and Ashley still friends? I would be surprised if they were. Then we get the saddest footage in the whole documentary, and we get Harry getting into his car and driving around in LA by himself. And the interviewer asks him, well, what do you think about your new life now? Like, is there anything that you miss from being in the institution? And I think it's really interesting that they always call his family the institution, because it's such a cold word, and they can't ever talk about it like, so do you miss your family? Because anybody would say yes, and everyone would sympathize with that. But if you say, do you miss being in the institution? Everyone would look at him sideways if he's like, yes, I wish I was in an institution. Especially in America, where that word isn't readily associated with something like a royal family. I hear institution and I just think about a cold government association. Anyway, he says, that he misses his family. He misses the big gatherings that they had, and, the cyclical and seasonal nature of being in a big family when you have all these different holidays to look forward to. He misses his friends. He says he's lost a lot of friends because of this whole thing. And he also says that he misses being in the UK. That's his home, and it's not home for his wife. It's not home for his kids who have only known the US, but that's his home. And then he tries to comfort his sad little lonely boy heart by saying that this is probably the place his mom would have ended up in. And so that makes it an okay place to be, because she probably would have ended up here if she'd lived. And it just makes you really sad that he's grasping for a reason to be there so desperately that the possibility that his mom might have ended up in LA is what he uses to make it okay that he's there. And then we end this documentary by a friend of his saying that Harry had always wanted a simple life with kids. And his friend says, yeah, Harry always wanted a simple life with a wife and 2 kids and 2 dogs, and the kind of life where you're wondering what you're going to have for dinner and what's tomorrow's schedule. And, he didn't really have a lot of that in the royal family. So, he's found that, and that's really good for him. And I'm like, well, Prince, what's it feel like to be a pauper? Because I don't know who the hell wants to sit around being like, well, what am I making for dinner for the billionth time? And, scrambling about schedules and who's going to drive who here and who's going to drive who here. And, like, that's the worst parts of life. Those aren't the things anyone aspires to. It's you aspire to find life despite that. I mean, it's not, I love cooking. I keep cooking every meal for my family. I mean, I'm not trying to be cynical. I get what he's saying in that there is a lot of peace that can be found in the mundane. And just because you don't have a big, exciting life where you're going to all these places and jet setting in all these places and you're spending all this money and staying at the best places, if you have there's something very comforting about normalcy, consistency, and routine. And so that's probably what he was talking about. But so much of this documentary was just the loneliness of 2 people banging it around in a house that's too big for them, with a mother-in-law that comes around who he calls grandma all the time, and just them and their kids. And yeah, I know they introduced the fact that Ashley's now in their life, so that was I guess a minor ray of light, but I cannot get off the fact of how cold and sad and dismal their Easter was compared to the Easters he would have had in England, with a big church service, an Easter church service, and then probably a big meal and family. And it's an event. Easter's an event, especially when your grandmother is the head of the Church of England. And so to then just be relegated to the front lawn without your shoes on and a couple of cardboard figurines and a couple of candied eggs is so sad and depressing. And so this whole documentary goes out in such a fizzle because it's difficult to see why this was worth it. And Meg reads at the very end her little story that she wrote about them. Once there was a girl, some people called her an actress. And once there was a boy, and some people called him a prince. But those people were wrong, because this was the story of a boy and a girl who one day met and giggled and giggled and giggled, and then went about... And she's got this like ridiculously stupid, childish, uninspiring vision of their love story. And she's so won over by her own charm that she is just giddy at getting to share this little speech that she wrote. And of course, the end of the speech ends with, "Love wins." And I'm left thinking, if this is love winning, God may I never know what it is to win. So that's the end of the documentary. What a waste of time. But we did enjoy it. We had a good time. What do you guys think about doing this next? Endgame by Omid Scobie. Of course, we know this is a book of propaganda, but why don't we pick that propaganda apart, shall we? It should be some good times. And then, of course, I'm still reading the other book that I've been doing about the Mountbattens. And if you guys like other celebrity stuff, if you would go on my channel page, there's tons of books that I've read that have nothing to do with the royal family if you need a little bit of a palate cleanser. But I'm thinking we'll do Omid Scobie's book next. All right, thank you guys so much for sitting through this documentary review with me, and I will see you guys later. Bye.